It's time for another wrestling reaction from Matt from Unbearable 73. This time we're going to be doing 10 times WWE didn't learn from their mistakes. Hit the like button for them. This is from Cultaholic Wrestling. You should all go subscribe to their channel. They do some of the really good wrestling videos. Let's full screen that baby and let's hit the road.
Mistakes? It's how you react to and learn from those mistakes
what a
that
face.
is important. World Wrestling Entertainment have made plenty of mistakes during their balmy existence. Some small, some big, some that should have put them out of business. To their credit, WWE have learned from some of these mistakes and avoided repeating history. Some, but not all, and whether it's bad creative decisions or boneheaded business moves, WWE replicated a few glaring missteps with often disastrous repercussions. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 times WWE didn't learn from their mistakes. Join us. Number 10, burying WCW stars. You might have heard about
So, before they say their spiel about this, this is a Vinceism. Vince is very anal about when putting guys over in his company that he did not bring up in his company. Even when he brings in outside talent, it's very rare you get outside talent like AJ Styles, who Vince was originally not impressed by. Like he didn't think he'd be successful, but he was really impressed by AJ's work when he finally saw the work. So that's why AJ got the push he got, Or, Tommy Dreamer, who Vince wound up loving, even though Tommy wound up leaving because he wanted to do the hardcore wrestling. But it's very rare for for an outside guy to make Vince's list, so to speak.
WWE.
And many of these WCW guys were on Vince's crap list because they all left WWE to go to WCW, and played up the sort of rivalry and all that.
Winning the Monday Night War with WCW as the mom-and-pop McMahon family-driven underdog crushed the evil corporation bankrolled by that dastardly billionaire Ted Turner. Even though they...
Sorry for the constant interruptions, WCW fell because Ted Turner sold all his stuff to AT&T and Warner and all that. Had Ted Turner kept control of WCW itself, he would have stepped in to stop some of the nonsense and keep them fiscally. Basically, WCW went off the rails of the crazy train when Ted Turner and his hand-appointed people stopped running WCW. It was taken away from him, and given to a committee of people. Eric Bischoff talks about that. He used to basically go right up to the chain of command, right up to Ted Turner, and then all of a sudden there was this weird committee of executives who were trying to do a combination of family time and no idea about wrestling, and they were just trying to help enforce, anyway.
Officially won the war when they bought WCW in March of 2001, which really had been over for some time by that point. WWE evidently felt the need to hammer home their superiority by burying the talent they acquired in its wake. The WCW portion of the alliance was routinely trounced during the ill-fated Invasion storyline, but WWE really dropped the ball when it came to some of WCW's biggest stars. Diamond Dallas Page was reduced to a joke almost immediately after getting obliterated by The Undertaker and his then-wife Sarah, while Scott Steiner, Booker T, and Goldberg all had issues when they were programmed opposite the all-conquering Triple H. That is 4 former world heavyweights.
So, Scott Steiner, to me, was already on the way down. His Big Papa Pump gimmick, I never liked it. I don't think it did good for him. The lost opportunities, Booker T eventually got over. But lost opportunities with Diamond Dallas Page, in particular Sting. The amount of money Vince could have made with Sting, if he had treated WCW, Sting still didn't get treated with respect when he eventually came to WCW. But the amount of money that Vince could have, he probably would have increased WWE's network by like 10%. I mean, I joke it up, but Sting was big. Okay, when you think of your big wrestlers from the 80s and the 90s, Undertaker came in like 90s era, but so you had him at the end, Flair for the entire time, Sting, Hulk Hogan, and Dusty Rhodes. Those are one or two other guys in there, but those are the guys who, if you had any one of those guys in your company, you could bank. And Vince could have had all of them, and he just,
heavyweight champions who had their momentum halted and stock reduced simply because they made their names elsewhere and WWE had a stiffy for the boss's son-in-law. The most egregious of all, however, was the treatment of Sting, an industry icon who finally signed with WWE 20 years into his career just to lose both of his high-profile pay-per-view matches. Number 9. Recreating the Owen Hart pile driver. If a WWE star suffers a serious, potentially life-threatening injury during a match, common sense would suggest that the move, spot, or stunt that caused it would be shelved post-haste. Especially if that injury happened to, you know, the biggest star in the business. When Owen Hart accidentally dropped Steve Austin on his head with a sit-out tombstone pile driver at SummerSlam 1997, that really should have been the end for that.
Okay, there's no such thing as a sit-out tombstone pile driver, okay? It's either a sit-out pile driver or a tombstone, okay? Tombstone is where you go down on your knees, and sit-out is where you sit down, okay? Now, obviously, the way the guy is facing could influence that, but that could, you know, the guy could technically face either way, but it's a safer move to do it if the guy's facing you, because then he can have his arms on you, helping with the control, you know? Yeah, but this is a tragic, like, Stone Cold's career got wrecked by this.
Variation of the move. Incredibly though, the Rocket not only performed the move again, but did so for an angle that played off the Texas Rattlesnake's brush with paralysis. The brainchild of a man with the brain of a child, Vince Russo, Owen delivered the move to Dan Severn on the September 28, 1998 episode of Raw, sending the Beast out of the arena on a backboard. Though the injury was kayfabe in nature, in reality, Hart had legitimately dropped Severn on his noggin, causing a jolt of electricity to shoot through the UFC fighter's body. Severn was rightfully furious with his opponent, but this dangerous idea should have never...
And the issue there is not the storyline, it's the fact that Owen Hart should not be doing pile drivers. You shouldn't be doing a pile driver to a guy unless you are strong enough to hold him so his head does not hit the ground. That's why the Undertakers and Kane, for the two of the few guys who are allowed to do pile drivers, not because the tombstone was any safer, because if you watch, their heads never hit the ground whenever they, no matter who they picked up for the tombstone, the other guy's head never hit the ground.
Ever been greenlit in the first place. Number 8. Body shaming the divas. Professional wrestling is, in large part, a cosmetic business, and no company is more concerned with the appearance of their superstars than WWE. Historically, male performers are supposed to look like Greek gods, while their female counterparts are expected to resemble supermodels. There are exceptions, of course, but if you're on the main roster and you're not perceived to be in tip-top shape, well, you can expect to be on the receiving end of some good old-fashioned public humiliation. Never was this more unsavory than when the company decided to fat-shame Mickie James via Lay Cool during the Piggy James storyline. By the way, that's fat-shamed in inverted commas because the former women's champion was in phenomenal shape by any sane person's standards.
This is stupid.
WWE apparently disagreed though, and so they poked fun at Mickey's physique in a way that left
this is an era when this is the standard storylines.
Very uncomfortable. So, if it didn't
work
work
the first time, why not
try again?
Common...
Poor Caitlyn became the object of AJ Lee's ridicule in 2013 and was mocked for being too big in a lamentable storyline that only proved WWE had some serious growing up to do. And that's...
Again, very important to note that in that era with AJ Lee doing that all of the WWE wrestling matches were tied into their Total Divas storylines, okay? And on Total Divas, which is, again, a fictional reality show, like a pseudo-reality show, this sniping between the divas was back and forth, okay? So you got to understand, importantly here, now, once Paige, who didn't want to do any of the Total Divas crap, right, wanted to take women's wrestling into the sort of legit view it is now in WWE, then the Total Divas stuff became separate again, right? So those storylines started to cut down because there's none of the social... Like I said, those are soap opera storylines from Total Divas, okay? That's another thing that, you know, when you complain about some of these storylines, wrestling is a soap opera. It has soap opera storylines, which include things like body shaming and affairs and things like that. And that's what's missing in the last 10 years. None of those like soap opera storylines, like to really draw you in. It's always about, oh, you beat me when you shouldn't have. I will have a revenge match. 3 matches later, we settled our feud and moved on.
Something that was proved once again during the Alexa Bliss Nia Jax storyline in 2018. Number 7, the XFL. Vince McMahon's decision to launch a professional football league in the early 2000s was, shall we say, a gamble.
Yet the XFL is still here. The Rock has it, and it's doing okay business-wise. The Rock is putting money into it.
When it comes to business endeavors outside of WWE, the McMahon Midas touch was practically non-existent. WBF, we hardly knew ye. Rule changes, substandard quality of play, and a sports entertainment presentation were all derided by critics, but people did tune in to watch the XFL. For the first week, anyway. After the initial ratings euphoria, reality set in and the numbers plummeted so hard that XFL partner NBC was forced to bail out after a single season, with both the network and Titan Sports Inc. losing $35 million apiece before they decided to cut their losses and shut the league down. Undeterred by such a metaphorical public spanking, Vince revived the XFL in 2020. Reviews were somewhat kinder for this iteration, but the ratings took a similar nosedive after the first week, and hastened by the shutdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, the XFL was forced to file for bankruptcy just 2 months after its relaunch. Best of luck, Dwayne. Number 6.
And also to point this out, that now Mark Twain has had a saying that there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, okay? When you call up TV ratings, in general, for 99 out of 100 shows, or sports included, ratings decline steadily as the season progresses, okay? That's not how you judge that. You judge it by, is there a core audience that's being retained? In other words, what's the bottom of your rating, so to speak? Is it, now I'm not defending the, but it's the B league. It's like the minor leagues of football, and it has a place in the modern world. And people who kind of decry this stuff, you're never gonna get. It's point is this: there's a space for it in the marketplace, okay? And I'd rather have people putting stuff into the marketplace and seeing if it works than not putting it there and just having nothing, just nothing.
Nostalgia title reigns. Living in the past. There's no future in it. While there is definitely a time and a place and a market for nostalgia in WWE, the company can be accused of not knowing when enough was enough on several occasions. The odd cameo or short comeback from a star of yesteryear can work brilliantly, but when they start hogging the limelight and winning titles at the expense of current stars and up-and-comers, well, then we have a problem. WWE's reliance on older part-timers has been well documented, and while you can see some reasoning or logic behind giving them a title run, that doesn't necessarily mean it's always or ever a good idea. Hulk Hogan's 2002 return started it all, as the strength of the Hulkster's crowd reactions convinced WWE to book him to beat Triple H.
No, that's a young man's conceit. This stuff, you can go back to wrestling for decades where guys who, wrestlers who lasted more than 10 years were rare, okay? It was not a career thing. You'd be working your regular job and try to work on try to see if you can get popular on the wrestlers to get the big money and maybe cut down your regular warehouse job. So you have to stop after a while when your family got big enough and whatever. The career guys who lasted 20 years in the industry, they would constantly go in and out of these federations, like after being away for 5 years, and they go, and they're like, Cowboy Buddy Epstein has returned after 7 years, and you give the nostalgia push for this 35-year-old guy or whatever. That's a common thing. It just got big. A lot of stuff when you look at pro wrestling and other stuff too, because of the explosion of television, social media, cable, it matters, but cable, YouTube and all that. The entire way you interpret things change. Like all these nostalgia visits make money, and you can complain about these nostalgia runs. The problem was they weren't used properly. Like having Hogan to come back to be the title, get another title run, and then use him to push. What they didn't do is then use him to push. The understanding was, Hulk, we'll bring you in. you have another title run. We'll give you a good maybe 5 months of this. We'll let you build up a bunch of face heat on it. But then you got to put over the heel we're going to put you against, right? And then he'll, and you'll wind up losing the series to that guy and drop the title to him. And then, what we'll do is you'll disappear for a while, and you come back for one more run where after he lost the title, you have a revenge series, and we'll let you win. We'll let you win a revenge series, and then so that's the way you kind of heal the nostalgia stuff.
For the undisputed title just a month after the game's WrestleMania 18 triumph. Since then, we've seen Ric Flair and Roddy Piper bag the world tag straps, a non-bumping Bret Hart win the US title, and most infamously of all, Goldberg unseat The Fiend for the Universal title. Big stars one and all, yes, but their latter-day title runs were harmful in some way, shape, or form. Number 5, rehiring the Ultimate Warrior. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, well, shame on us all, because what the hell are we doing here? Seriously, 3 times fooled? Come on now. The relationship between Vince McMahon and Jim Hellwig, aka the Ultimate Warrior, was at best strained and at worst utterly tempestuous. The face-painted musclehead was a big star for WWE in 1991, no doubt, and he felt like he should have been compensated more, among other things, for his efforts, which led to the threat of a SummerSlam no-show followed by a suspension/quitting. Warrior returned after months in exile, only for the comeback to end when he fell afoul of the company's stringent new drug testing policy. Their relationship was put on ice for the best part of 4 years before desperate times called for desperate measures and Vince and Jim resurrected their business relationship. This latest attempt to work together ended in acrimony after just a few months when Warrior began no-showing, kicking off years of bad blood that resulted in lawsuits, mudslinging, and straight-up character assassination. Number 4, trying to get Linda McMahon elected twice. Linda McMahon eventually got a spot in government thanks to the McMahon family's close ties with...
Okay, so, important thing is this. Linda McMahon had her own career. This is a bit of political propaganda. This shouldn't be in this at all. Okay, this is clearly someone with a sniping at. This is why you shouldn't. Linda McMahon had her own career. She has a brilliant businesswoman. She had a little career in government, that type of thing, and she ran for office, legitimate on her own. And this is just political sniping to do what they're doing now.
With then-President Donald Trump, but when Linda tried to get elected on her own merit and dime, things didn't quite go according to plan. Looking for a seat in the United States Senate, Linda left her WWE responsibilities in 2009 in order to run as a Republican candidate for the state of Connecticut. Self-funding her own campaign, Linda supposedly alienated voters, particularly female ones, and though she promised to be a job creator, her association with the tawdry sports entertainment franchise she helped create was a stick to beat her with. I mean, it's hard to explain the whole Trish Stratus barks like a dog angle when all you want to do is discuss policy, isn't it? Linda ultimately lost to her Democratic adversary by 11% after spending a truckload of cash, but like Vince with the XFL years beforehand, she wasn't going to let torching tens of millions of dollars put her off. So she ran again in 2012, a second attempt that also ended in defeat. The total cost of both campaigns was close to $100 million, much of which came from her personal bank account. Number 3, picking...
And she spent her own money, and who cares?
The wrong WrestleMania main event. If there is one match per year that WWE needs to get absolutely spot on, it is the main event of WrestleMania.
Okay, the reality is, from WrestleMania 15 through WrestleMania 33 or whatever, the main event is always the Undertaker's match. That's been the number one thing fans have wanted to see 9 out of 10 WrestleManias.
For a long time, the headliner at the Showcase of the Immortals was typically a WWE title match featuring the winner of the Royal Rumble. This tradition has, on occasion, been a detriment though. For example, 2002's WrestleMania 18,
Yep.
when The Rock and Hulk Hogan electrified the
This was an
Toronto
amazing
Skydome
match.
crowd so much that their circuits blew up, and they were practically zombified for Triple H and Chris Jericho's show closer. The Cerebral Assassin was stung again 7 years later, when his and Randy Orton's WWE title grudge match played out before near silence after Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker had produced one of the most incredible displays in WWE history while completely stealing the show. And then there have been all the times WWE booked a match to close the show of shows when there was a far superior alternative available. I mean, who wants Hogan versus Sid when there could have been Hogan versus Flair? Or Yokozuna versus Hart when Hart versus Savage was possible? Or John Cena versus The Miz when literally anything else would have sufficed instead? Number 2, a pair of royal fumbles. After the main event of WrestleMania, the second biggest match WWE has to get right is arguably the Royal Rumble. A lot of thought goes into the annual 30-person over-the-top rope spectacular, from the order of entry to the order of elimination to who eliminates who, and so on and so forth. In the end, the most important thing is picking an appropriate winner, a task WWE can be accused of mucking up from time to time. Like when they completely ballsed it up in back-to-back years with 2 of the worst received Rumbles of all time. Fans desperately wanted emerging cult hero Daniel Bryan to not only enter the 2014 Rumble, but win it and book his place in the Mania main event. WWE, on the other hand, preferred the returning Dave Bautista. When Bryan not only didn't win, but didn't even enter the match, fans completely turned on it, turning it into a fiasco. A year later, WWE thought they were covering...
That was when WWE started, if you go back and, like, you'd have to watch it live via pay-per-view, not via the WWE network, okay? And you would hear the actual crowd reaction. Because what happened is, on WWE network, that's around when they started putting in the fake crowd noise, okay? And not miking the crowd anymore because they wanted to cut down. Part of it was also to cut down on some of the chants, which honestly, wrestling, you need... the chants are big. The chants are a big part of the audience.
Covering their bases by having D-Bry exit the match early, but the Philadelphia crowd vehemently rejected the company's decision to have Roman Reigns win the match instead. Having learned nothing from the year before, WWE's tone-deaf handling of the 2015 Rumble was so bad that even The Rock got booed. Number 1, steroid controversies. As we discussed earlier, WWE is an appearance-obsessed company in a cosmetic industry. And with cosmetic industries, be they sports or entertainment, comes invariably cosmetic enhancements. The use of performance-enhancing drugs is a touchy subject and one that WWE goes to great plans to avoid, until they are left with no choice but to face the music. Like in the early to mid-90s, when the company was embroiled in a scandal related to Dr. George Zahorian, a ringside physician for WWE events in Pennsylvania, for supplying wrestlers with the muscle-building drugs. Vince McMahon was indicted, went to trial, and was ultimately acquitted, but the reputational damage was done thanks to those testifying and those blatantly fibbing on the Arsenio Hall show. Brother! WWE had implemented drug testing, but then stopped it until the untimely passing of Eddie Guerrero in 2005 forced them to create the wellness policy. Some physiques got softer and leaner, yes, but the flaws of the wellness policy came to light when numerous WWE performers past and present were implicated in another scandal in the wake of the Benoit tragedy. Having seemingly learned little from their first steroid-related controversy, WWE and its stars immediately went on the defensive and produced nothing but spin, deflection, and outright lies while praying the whole thing would blow over.
Okay, so on the steroid issue, personally, I don't care if people use steroids in non-sports. I just don't. I mean, I care from the health point of view. I think, a lot of injuries guys suffer aren't because they're roided out. It's because, the roids, well, they're roided out, but not like it makes them, I think it contributes in the sense that it messes their body up and therefore they perform less and get injured. Not that the steroid itself causes the injury, but the effect on your body does, like Benoit. They're blaming it on steroids. I'm blaming it on all the concussions Benoit got from his stupid Benoit bomb where he would jump off the top rope and land with his head on the opponent or the floor. Okay? He probably got 10 concussions per year. Okay? Anyway, that was okay. There was some stupidity in there, like that political nonsense. Just stay away from politics. And this was only 2 months ago. Stay away from politics, okay? Just stay away. Otherwise, it was an okay video, just not great, So, my name is Matt. This is Memorable 73 of Wrestling Reaction. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike. Comment down below, ask any questions. Thank you. Have a nice day.